It's math time with Heinz. It's math time with Heinz. Math time.
Hi everybody, in this lesson here we're going to review how to factor trinomials, and that's something you did in 9th grade a whole bunch of, and today we're just going to practice factoring trinomials to add to our factoring techniques. So to get us started, I want you to find me the product of x plus 6 times x plus 3. So pause the video here and find me that product. So to find that product, I'm going to make a table. I'm going to make a table with I have x plus 6 times x plus 3, where I get x squared, 6x, 3x, and 18. So my final answer, that product, these two factors, x plus 6 times x plus 3, that product equals, well, what does it equal? It equals x squared plus the sum, 6 and 3 is 9x, plus 18. So that right there is the product. Now what I want you to notice is that today we're going to be factoring it. So we're going to start with this trinomial and find out what are the two factors. What I want you to notice is 6 and 3 add to 9, so I added to that middle term, and 6 times 3 multiply it to 18. So that's how we're going to factor it, is we're going to notice that that middle term is the sum of the two numbers on my factors, and that final answer there is the product of those two numbers. So let's see if we remember how to do this. Factor the following polynomials completely. So x squared plus 8x plus 15, it's a trinomial. So I'm going to make my two set of parentheses and say, all right, how can I get x squared? Well, that's x times x. That's the only way to get x squared in my table. Now, we ask ourselves two questions. We say, self, what multiplies to 15? That adds to 8. What multiplies to 15? That adds to 8. What multiplies to 15? Well, let's think about it. 1 and 15, I like to go in order. 2 and no, 3 and 5. That gets me 8 right there. So a positive 3 and a positive 5 does the trick. Those are my two factors. So you find your two factors by asking yourself what multiplies to the constant term that adds to the middle number, the linear term there. But when we factor, we should always realize we should be looking for a GCF. We should always be looking for a GCF. And when I see this right here, I notice that I can take out a factor of 3. And now I've got a trinomial left to factor. So here we go. Let's factor that trinomial now. I'm going to ask myself, self, what multiplies to the constant term, negative 5, that adds to 4? What multiplies to negative 5, that adds to 4? Notice if I multiply to a negative number, that means I need one of them to be positive and one of them to be negative, because I'm multiplying to a negative. I'm adding to a positive, so I'm thinking what makes 5? Well, 5 and 1. I want to add to a positive 4, so the 5 is positive and the 1 is negative. And don't forget to bring down that GCF there. All right, looking for a GCF. Well, everybody's got an x, and that negative out front's a little weird to factor. So let's take out a negative x here. That way my x squared term is always positive. We want that leading x squared term to be positive when we factor trinomials. It makes our life a lot easier. So I'm taking out a negative and a factor of x. Taking out a negative and a factor of x. Now I've got a nice trinomial here to factor by asking myself, self, what multiplies to 20? That adds to negative 12. Well, notice I'm multiplying to a positive 20, so they have the same sign because my multiplier is positive. Over here, when my multiplier was negative, I knew I had one of each. But since I'm adding to a negative, I need both of them to be negative. So I've got 1 and 20, 2 and 10, 4 and 5. That's all I've got. Who gets me 12 is negative 2 and negative 10. And bring down that GCF. So factoring trinomials isn't that bad. You just have to, this is the hardest part right here. What multiplies to this, that adds to that. That's the hardest part of this whole problem. So factor this trinomial, 2x squared plus 11x plus 12. The problem here is that I don't have that GCF. The problem here is I don't have that GCF there of that 2 because I'm stuck with that 2x squared, whereas all of these ones here had a plain old x squared that I could factor. And that's when we can use this short method here. Otherwise, you've got to go through and do what I call the AC method, which I'll show you right now. So factor this trinomial. The way that we're going to factor this is by splitting the middle term. We're going to split the linear term here. We're going to split the middleman. So the way that we do that is we're not going to say what multiplies to 12. We're going to say what multiplies to 24. What multiplies to 2 times 12. What multiplies to 2 times 12 is 24. That adds to my middleman of 11. So I call it the AC method because you're taking your leading coefficient and your constant to figure out what your multiplier is. So now I need to find me 2 numbers that multiply to 24 and add to 11. I'm thinking it's 8 and 3. So what that allows me to do is it allows me to split my middle term. I split my 11x into 8x plus 3x. So I took a trinomial and I turned it into 4 terms here. I didn't do anything illegal. All I did was I changed how 11x looks. I uncombined like terms. So now we can look at these first 2 guys and say, what can I take out? Well, GCF from these first 2 terms here looks like a 2x to me. X plus 4. And then we look at the next 2 guys and say, what can I GCF out? Well, you can take out a positive 3. Make sure that you always write a positive or a negative, depending on what you're doing. And I'm left with x plus 4, which is awesome because what's my new GCF? What do both of these terms have in common here? They both have that factor of x plus 4, which leaves me with 2x plus 3. And that's how we factor when we have a leading coefficient other than 1. So to go through that again, you multiply the first term and the last term to get your multiplier. Then you split the middle term, whatever with those 2 numbers you came up with, and then you look at the first 2, look at the last 2, and take out a bunch of GCFs. So all you're doing is you're splitting the middle term, and then taking out a GCF, and then a final GCF, which will be this binomial factor. The rest of this video, we're just practicing, folks. The rest of this video, we are just practicing. So here we go. Here we go. What do I have? 6 of them to do, and then I'll let you guys try some on your own. 3x squared plus 17x minus 6. The first thing we're going to do is look for a GCF. Is there a GCF? No. I can't divide everybody by 3 here, so I'm going to use the AC method. What multiplies to a times c? Negative 18. That adds to my middleman of 17. How am I splitting apart 17 here? Well, what makes 18? 1 and 18, 2 and 9, 3 and 6. I think I'm going to use 1 and 18. That's how I'm going to get 17, right? 18 minus 1. So I'm going to split my middleman there. I'm going to split up 17 as 18x and minus 1x. Notice that they get the x because that's that middle term I'm splitting up there. And then we look at the first 2. What's my GCF? 3x, which leaves me with x plus 6, which means what better be in the set of parentheses over here? It better be x plus 6. So what do I need a GCF out from there? Well, it looks like I need to take out a negative 1. Negative 1, good, good. So now, finally, that's my new common factor, and I'm left with 3x minus 1. And that's how we factor trinomials. I need you guys to get pretty fast at this because we're going to be doing this in the middle of a bigger, more complicated problem. This is going to become one little step. So this isn't something you should be spending 10 minutes on. This should be something you become fluent in. Slide on over here. All right, so I can't divide it. There's no GCF, so let's use the AC method. What multiplies to negative 60? A times c, that adds to my middle name of 4. So 60, 1 and 60, 2 and 30, 3 and 20. I like to go in order just so I don't miss any values. I think that's it. So which of these combinations gets me to 4? Notice one's positive and one's negative. So who's 4 apart from each other? 6 and 10. I think we go 10 minus 6 is how I'm going to do it. So split your middleman. 4x squared plus 10x minus 6x minus 15. So I split my middleman into 10x minus 6x. That term there became those two terms. I uncombined like terms. And now we factor, we GCF. What can I take out from 4x squared plus 10x? I think I'm taking out a 2x. 2x plus 5. So I better get a 2x plus 5 over here. So what can I GCF from these terms here? It looks like I'm taking out a negative 3. Good. And now my new GCF is 2x plus 5. And I'm left with 2x minus 3. And that's my final answer. Here's a doozy. Here's a doozy because there's no GCF, which means I need to go through the AC method. What multiplies to negative 120? That adds to 7. That looks awful. What multiplies to negative 120? But I'm just going to make my list of factors on the side here. 1 and 120, 2 and 60, 3 and 40, 4 and 30, 5 and 24, 6 and 20, 7, 8 and 15. Again, I'm just on my calculator dividing here. I'm just dividing 120 divided by 8. Yep, I get 15. 120 divided by 9. Nope, 120 divided by 10. 10 and 12, and I think that's it. So again, this came just right from me on my calculator. 120 divided by 1, divided by 2, divided by 3. That's what gets me that list. Who gets me to 7? Who gets me to 7? 8 and 15 do. So I'm going to split my middle terms. Here we go. How do I split it? I need a positive 7, so 15 minus 8. Plus 15x minus 8x minus 20. Then we group our first two and take out a 3x. So, oh no, that leaves me with a 2x plus 5. So I better have 2x plus 5 over here, which means I'm taking out a factor of negative 4. 2x plus 5, 3x minus 4. All right, let's see. Okay, so I'm starting with a negative here. Even though I can't GCF a negative out from, there's no number to GCF out, let's take out a factor of negative 1 from everybody. I don't like factoring when that leading coefficient's negative. It just makes things a little bit more complicated. So at this point, I'm going to ask myself what multiplies to negative 6 that adds to 5. So I have opposite signs. Someone's positive and someone's negative. 2 and 3, nope, I have opposite signs, so I've got to go 6 and 1. So I'm going to split my middle term as 6x minus 1x. Can I take out from here is a 3x, x plus 2, and then what can I take out from here? Negative 1, x plus 2, and that leaves me with x plus 2 times 3x minus 1. Don't lose that negative 1 factor we took out way back when. Hopefully you're noticing it's the same steps every time. The hardest part of this whole thing is over here where you actually have to do some thinking and some mental math. Oh, goodness. But at least there's a GCF. I'm looking right here and notice I can divide everybody by 2. It might not help a lot, but I can divide everybody by 2. Just makes the numbers a lot more manageable to work with. So I'm going to ask myself, what multiplies to 18? That adds to negative 11. Where did I get 18 from? 8 times C. 1 and 18, 2 and 9, 3 and 6. Who gets me to 11? Those guys do. Minus 2x minus 9x plus 3. So I split my negative 11 here as negative 2 and negative 9. So then I can take out a GCF, divide by 2x. What times 2x is 2x? A lot of people forget that negative 1. So I better have that over there. What times 3? Negative 3 times 3 is negative 9. And finally, I get 3x minus 1 times 2x minus 3. Don't lose them. I had a GCF of 2. You didn't have to take out that GCF of 2 from the start. It would have ended up in one of your factors, but then it wouldn't have been factored completely. So make sure you're taking out that as GCF right from the start to make your life easier. And finally, here we go. Last one before I let you try some on your own. There's no GCF, so what multiplies to negative 48? What multiplies to negative 48? That adds to negative 8. All right, factors of 48, here we go. 1 and 48, 2 and 24, 3 and 16? No. I've got my calculator here. I don't know why I'm trying to. Yes, 3 and 16. I know my facts. 4 times 12. 5 doesn't divide in. 6 and 8 does. So which of these combinations get me to negative 8? Well, notice that I have opposite signs here. One's got to be positive and one's got to be negative. So I have to subtract to 8. Those guys subtract to 8. Positive 4, negative 12 to end me up being negative. So 16x squared plus 4x minus 12x minus 3. Split the middle term, positive 4, negative 12. You can take a 4x out from there. So leaves me with 4x plus 1, right? 4x is good. So I better have 4x plus 1 over here. It looks like I need a negative 3, yes. And then finally, 4x plus 1 is my new GCF, and I'm left with 4x minus 3 as the other factor. So that's how we factor trinomials. This technique works when you have 3 terms that need to be factored. When you have 3 terms that need to be factored, this is the technique you're going to use. And it's going to be an important technique, so make sure you've mastered this skill. If you need more practice, I've got homework problems for you to do here below. Other than that, I'll see you guys in the next video or in class, whenever I see you again. Bye, guys.